Hello and welcome tonight. National Information Center urges citizens in the Northeast to exercise the highest level of vigilance against terror attacks during the governorship and state assembly polls. Federal government announces closure of all land borders from midnight of Thursday ahead of Saturday's elections. INEC meets with stakeholders of various political parties, rules out preparations for the weekend's polls. Massachusetts court finds a surviving Boston Marathon bomber guilty of multiple charges, carrying the death penalty.
On business news tonight, FBN Holdings profits after tax jumps to 17.3% in 2014.
Seven-time champions, Pharaohs of Egypt, standing in the way of Nigeria's Super Eagles qualification for the 2017 African Cup of Nations.
Good evening, I'm Amarachi Ubani. We begin tonight in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, where agencies of the federal government have been on their toes, speaking about the crucial governorship and state House of Assembly polls coming up this weekend. The National Information Center is appealing to citizens, especially residents in the Northeast, to exercise the highest level of vigilance for fear of terrorist attacks. The center also speaks about the investigations into an alleged hacking of INEC site by the APC, which was reported by the Department of State Services before the presidential elections, as well as the missing Chibok schoolgirls.
Except for a few cases of attacks and an explosion in Gombe and Enugu states during the just concluded presidential elections, the March 28 polls were adjudged peaceful across the country. While commending voters and security agencies for their roles and decorum during the exercise, Mr. Michael Mire urged citizens to be more vigilant during Saturday's polls.
Recall that in our statement on the eve of the presidential and National Assembly elections, we reiterated to Nigerians the need to exercise the highest level of vigilance and also scrutinize the activities of unknown and strange persons within their environment. In respect of the forthcoming governorship and state assembly elections, we remind the citizens to maintain a similar, even higher level of vigilance and caution to ensure a peaceful and incident-free exercise.
According to Mr. Omire, the Nigerian Army is intensifying efforts to stamp out terrorism from the Northeast. Although the Army has dislodged the insurgents from their various strongholds in recent times, Mr. Omire said the search for the over 200 schoolgirls abducted from Chibok a year ago is still ongoing.
The search for the Chibok girls continues, and that is why even with the recapture of Bama and the rest, security and military have not retreated. So again, until it is concluded, we cannot say that we cannot just begin to believe speculative conclusions.
The center was also asked to speak on the reported investigations into an alleged hacking of the INEC site by the APC, which was reported by the Department of State Services before the presidential elections.
Come to your office for that.
I think you will come to my office for an answer. When I briefed the press, right, it wasn't a general National Information Center affair. So I really appreciate that. And to see that it's being appropriately handled.
The Department of State Services and the police have been regular parties to the security briefings at the National Information Center since its establishment last year.
In preparation for the governorship and state House of Assembly elections on Saturday, all land borders have been directed shut by the federal government from midnight of Thursday to midnight of Sunday. The Ministry of Interior announced the closing of land and sea borders with no restriction on airspace. The federal government had made a similar announcement before the presidential and National Assembly elections on March 28th. The ministry said in a statement the move is to prevent foreigners from participating in the elections. Staying with the weekend polls, the Nigeria police is talking tough with a message that anyone harboring ideas of truncating the process should be ready to face the music. The warning is, however, going the way of politicians who have plans to foment trouble, as well as some policemen who might be foolhardy enough to allow themselves act outside the roles that they should perform.
We've left no stone unturned, because there will be no need picking a foot soldier when the baron is still there. He can lay more deadly eggs. So what we have done is to identify those who are the sponsors of these problems, who are their foot soldiers. Together they are labeled as those who are likely to cause violence, who are likely to break the law, who are likely to create problems for Nigerians who are out to exercise their franchise. There's no way we are going to allow both the sponsors and the foot soldiers to operate freely in the forthcoming elections. They did not have a free ride during the presidential election, and they will not have it this time around. So I want to assure Nigerians that Nigeria police, in concert with other law enforcement agencies and security agencies, have done a lot of work in trying to identify these potential troublemakers so as to bring them to book and make sure they do not actualize their threats or their potential.
The president has paid a private visit to a former Nigerian Army Chief of Army Staff, retired General Theophilus Danjuma, at his residence in Abuja. The agenda of the meeting was not disclosed as it was held behind closed doors. President Goodluck Jonathan has been holding private consultations in preparation for his handover, having lost in the presidential elections to General Muhammadu Buhari. He had earlier met with the president-elect at the presidential villa on Friday to discuss the transition of government. After the closed-door meeting, General Danjuma said that President Jonathan's decision to concede defeat to Buhari has set a record in the history of the country. A Vice President-elect, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has assured teachers that the government will provide free tertiary programs across the states. During a gathering with members of the Nigerian Union of Teachers in Lagos, Professor Osinbajo re-emphasized the need for regular training of teachers to raise the standard of education in the country. Professor Osinbajo goes on to say that General Buhari's administration is determined to improve the education and health sectors.
I asked the governor for this opportunity because of the very great importance that the Buhari administration will place on education. If you look at all of what we have been saying in our manifesto, one thing that's very clear is that we are going to spend a lot of time and a lot of resources on education, especially public education. That's why this consultation is very important, but it's only the beginning of the consultations that I intend to have. Lagos is the model for what we want to do. For example, we've talked about free education for science, technology, engineering, and maths, and free education for teachers. Free education at the tertiary level for teachers. So teachers who want to go to university, there'll be free education. It's a very important program because one of the basic problems that we have is the fact that we have not continued effectively with teacher education, teacher training. And that is very important to us. Continuous education for teachers and teacher training in particular. That's very, very important.
Vice President-elect Professor Yemi Osinbajo. In part two after the break, the All Progressive Grand Alliance in Abia State at loggerheads with party's national leadership over the adoption of the PDP's governorship candidate. That's in a moment. Please join us again.